You know, by the year 2026, the idea of working just to pay your rent, it won't merely be difficult. It's going to be completely economically obsolete.
Yeah, the entire concept of the traditional laborer is just, well, it's effectively dead.
Right. And the only way to survive this coming automation wave is to completely abandon the idea of working for a paycheck. So, welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we are exploring a really radical roadmap. It's laid out in this fascinating lecture from February 2026, given in Changwon, South Korea.
Yeah, and we're zeroing in on the future of South Korea's industrial heartland, right? The region known as Gyeongnam.
Exactly. But I want to be clear to you listening, this isn't just some local geography lesson.
Oh, far from it. What we're really looking at here is a profound blueprint for the end of the traditional labor era.
It's massive.
It is. I mean, it's a fundamental shift in the human experience. It maps out the future of global culture, and honestly, it demands a complete reimagining of how every single one of us views our careers.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to really grasp the stakes here, we have to kind of picture the visual backdrop of this transition.
Right, so imagine a really gritty, heavy industry factory cityscape. Like the exact kind of environment that defined all those 20th century economic miracles.
Lots of smokestacks, assembly lines, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Now watch that image shift in your mind. Imagine those old factories transforming into this bright, hyper-connected, futuristic hub for culture and research.
Wow, that's quite a leap.
It's the tightrope this region is currently walking. A region entirely defined by physical manufacturing has to pivot its entire identity, or else it just faces imminent collapse.
And to understand that impending global shift, we really have to start with the immediate local crisis this roadmap describes.
Yeah, the text explicitly points to 2026 as the absolute point of no return.
Which is right now.
Right now, it issues this stark warning. If sweeping structural changes aren't made immediately, decline isn't just a possibility, it is a mathematical certainty.
Yikes. And the very first thing on the chopping block, according to the source, is the old model of local politics.
Yeah, the roadmap argues that the era of independent provincial governments operating in their own little silos is entirely dead.
Like completely finished.
Completely. Specifically, it looks at the dynamic between Gyeongnam and neighboring powerhouses, like Busan. Historically, there's been this deeply ingrained zero-sum mindset there.
Where one side's win is the other side's loss.
Precisely. Local leaders operate on the assumption that Gyeongnam can somehow claw its way to success while quietly hoping a neighboring city like Busan just, stumbles and falls.
Wow.
But the strategy outlined here states unequivocally that this model of local self-interest is basically a suicide pact.
So the only viable path forward presented in this text is the complete frictionless integration of Busan, Ulsan, and Gyeongnam, which is often called the Bu-ilgyang region, into one massive, unified, mega-metropolitan city.
Right. And the mechanism driving that necessity is something the roadmap calls energy size.
Energy size. I like that term.
Yeah, they have to merge to achieve the critical energy size required to actually operate in the future economy. What's fascinating here is that energy size goes way beyond just, adding up populations on a spreadsheet.
What does it mean practically, then?
Well, in an interconnected global economy, operating as isolated provincial governments means you're constantly duplicating infrastructure.
Oh, I see. So you've got three competing ports, three competing transit systems.
Exactly. And three separate bureaucratic hurdles for any global capital that's trying to enter the region.
That sounds like a nightmare for investors.
It is. By dissolving those borders, you aren't just combining resources, you're creating a unified gravity well. You create this critical mass of population and infrastructure that generates enough momentum to actually attract global investment.
So the era of the small-scale provincial capital is pretty much being replaced by the era of the megacity ecosystem.
Spot on.
Let's try to ground this in a practical analogy. Imagine you are looking at a failing legacy tech corporation, right?
Okay.
You have all these different departments, marketing, R&D, hardware, software, and they are acting like completely independent fiefdoms.
Oh man, I've seen companies exactly like that.
Right, and they are fighting each other tooth and nail over the last remaining scraps of a shrinking annual budget.
So the marketing VP is trying to sabotage the hardware VP just to protect their own team's funding.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the entire company is sinking because the actual market has moved on.
That makes perfect sense.
What this roadmap is saying is that you cannot survive by winning a localized budget fight inside a dying company. The only way to survive is to tear down the walls between those departments, pool every single resource you have left, and invent an entirely new product to save the whole enterprise.
And that requires a massive psychological evolution. I mean, the roadmap is demanding a shift from a competitive survival mindset to a deeply collaborative ecosystem-level mindset.
Which is not easy to do.
It's incredibly hard.
Mhm.
It issues a very harsh reality check. In this hyper-connected era, if a local area acts selfishly and tries to enrich itself at the immediate expense of its neighbors, the network will isolate it.
Oh, wow. So they punish themselves, essentially.
Exactly. That selfish node will actually be the very first to face severe economic hardship because it cuts itself off from that shared energy size. You simply cannot isolate yourself from the regional organism anymore.
But, that forces us to ask the underlying mechanical question here. Why do these cities need to merge right now? Why is their current energy size suddenly insufficient after, decades of wild success?
Well, according to the text, it's because the fundamental economic engine that built these cities from the ground up, factory labor, is coming to a definitive, permanent end.
The roadmap is brutally direct about the timeline we are on here, isn't it?
Very. The era of manual labor, of manufacturing physical goods as the primary vehicle for human economic survival, is over.
Just to be clear, though, the factories themselves aren't disappearing, right? We still need physical stuff.
Oh, sure, we absolutely still need goods. But the human laborers standing inside those factories, they're being replaced. Advanced robotics and AI are taking over the entirety of the manufacturing process.
And the text doesn't mince words about the philosophical implications for human beings either. It provocatively equates the modern concept of a laborer to a modern-day slavery system.
Yeah, and it defines a laborer as someone who trades their physical time simply to secure basic survival, or just to earn enough time off to play.
Now, obviously, we are just reporting the ideas presented in this specific roadmap, so we're not taking sides here. But it is a really heavy, paradigm-shattering claim.
It certainly is. It argues that tying human worth to repetitive physical output for basic survival is an intellectual trap.
How does it justify such a bold claim?
To understand the mechanics of that, we have to look at the historical context it provides regarding the Korean Peninsula. For roughly 5,000 years, deep knowledge and complex education were aggressively gatekept. Only the elite class, the Sedaibu, the scholar officials, had the privilege and the resources to study, strategize, and think deeply. The vast majority of the population was intentionally kept out of that intellectual sphere just to maintain the social order.
Right, but then we hit the post-World War II era, and you see this massive, unprecedented democratization of intellect.
Exactly. Largely powered by the universal adoption of Hangul, the Korean alphabet, you suddenly have essentially 100% literacy.
That's incredible.
For the first time in 5 millennia, both men and women across the entire socioeconomic spectrum have access to high-level education.
Which creates an immense structural friction in the modern economy, right?
Absolutely. You take an entire population that has been systematically elevated to the intellectual capacity of the ancient elite, and you shove them onto a factory floor to do repetitive manual labor for 8 hours a day.
It's bound to cause problems.
The roadmap points out that this mismatch is entirely unsustainable. When a population becomes universally highly educated, their core value to society completely detaches from their raw physical output. Therefore, they have to shed the label and the identity of a laborer.
And what do they become instead? The text insists they need to transition into what it calls researchers in their respective fields.
Yes, the future of the economy must shift entirely away from physical manufacturing and pivot toward culture, education, and social welfare.
Okay, I really have to push back on this concept because on paper, an entire society of researchers sounds incredibly utopian.
It does sound a bit out there, yeah.
Right. Is that actually practical in a functioning economy? Are we really saying that the person running a local neighborhood cafe or, someone managing a regional logistics business needs to view themselves as a researcher?
It's a fair question.
I mean, how does that translate to a Tuesday morning when you are just trying to serve a cup of coffee to a customer?
It is the most critical question to ask because the text isn't suggesting that the cafe owner needs to put on a white lab coat and start conducting, chemical analysis on coffee beans.
Okay, good. That would be weird.
Yeah. The concept of the researcher here is entirely about optimizing the human experience within your specific domain.
But break that down for me. What are they actually researching on a daily basis?
They are researching social dynamics and community elevation. Let's stick with your cafe owner example.
Sure.
In a fully automated world, a robotic arm can pour the perfect cup of coffee infinitely cheaper and faster than a human ever could.
That's true.
So if pouring the coffee is your only value, you are obsolete. Being a researcher means the physical labor of making the coffee becomes totally secondary.
What's primary then?
The cafe owner is actively studying their community. They are researching how the physical space of their cafe can foster better social interactions. They're analyzing how to improve the cultural fabric of their specific neighborhood and elevating the emotional welfare of their patrons and their employees.
Oh, I see.
Their real economic value comes from their intellectual ability to study, improve, and elevate the human elements of their business that a machine just cannot replicate.
I get it now. If you are highly educated, simply executing repetitive tasks without actively trying to intellectually improve the environment around you, it's a massive waste of human potential.
Exactly. You have to evolve from a mechanical operator into a cultural architect.
But a global shift of that magnitude creates a huge vacuum. I mean, if South Korea is no longer primarily exporting physical products off assembly lines, what is the actual intellectual export they are offering the world?
Good question.
What are all these newly minted researchers supposed to be producing for the global market?
The roadmap's answer is crystal clear on this. Global culture.
Global culture, okay.
The text points directly to the current phenomenon of Hallyu, the Korean wave of pop culture, music, and television that has just deeply permeated the globe.
Oh yeah, it's everywhere.
But it insists we are severely misinterpreting this wave. What we are seeing right now is merely the surface layer. It is just the preamble.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about K-pop, K-dramas, and Korean beauty standards in, tech terms.
Okay, tech terms. Let's hear it.
That global cultural footprint is essentially just the user interface, the UI. It's flashy, it's highly intuitive, and it successfully gets millions of global users to effectively download the app of Korean culture.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. But you don't build a massive user base just to give them a pretty interface. By the year 2030, according to this text, those users are going to start looking for the back-end code.
Yes. They're going to look for the deep philosophical and societal structures that actually power the whole system.
And the demographics actually back up that timeline, don't they?
They do. The roadmap highlights a really fascinating, vital statistic. Currently, 70% of the people globally who are actively investing the time to learn Hangul in the Korean language are women and youth.
70%? That's huge.
It is a massive leading indicator. The youth and women of the world represent the vanguard of the future demographic shift, and they are arming themselves with a language because they are intuitively drawn to a totally different cultural model.
So they're preparing for something bigger.
Exactly. The text argues that while many historically admired developed nations are currently kind of stagnating, trapped in outdated industrial philosophies and political gridlock, Korea is uniquely positioned to offer a new paradigm.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, you immediately see the immense, almost crushing pressure this places on the region.
Oh, the pressure is enormous.
The roadmap is warning that when this global demographic arrives at your doorstep in 2030, fluent in your language and having consumed all your art, they aren't just going to ask for an autograph from a pop star.
No, they're going to ask a very direct existential question. What should we learn from you?
That is quite the challenge.
It really is.
Yeah.
They will say, we are here. We have downloaded the interface. Now, how do we structure our society? Korea must be ready with profound, structural answers regarding human welfare, education, and harmonious living.
They can't just hand these global citizens another high-tech smartphone or another manufactured pop album.
Right. They have to offer the back-end code. They have to offer a higher level of functional societal philosophy.
Which brings us to the core mechanism of the roadmap. When the world comes knocking in 2030 asking for that guidance, what is the exact philosophy that these Korean researchers must offer?
The text points to a very specific, ancient framework, the Hongik Ingen ideology.
Hongin Ingen. What does that mean exactly?
It roughly translates to broadly benefiting humanity. The text makes a compelling historical argument here, asserting that this specific ideology is the foundational reason the Korean people managed to survive unabsorbed for thousands of years.
Even while being surrounded by massive, aggressively expanding empires.
Exactly. It was an identity rooted not in conquest, but in mutual benefit.
They survived by holding on to this core identity of existing to benefit others.
Yeah.
And the roadmap uses this ancient philosophy to draw a sharp, critical distinction for the modern economy. It separates an enterprise from a business.
Right. This is a key distinction.
In the vocabulary of this text, an enterprise is defined as an entity focused purely on extraction and growth. It's the classic 20th century capitalist model: expand at all costs, accumulate wealth, and dominate the competition.
Conversely, a business, under this new definition, is an entity whose primary structural focus is generating benefit for people.
So the focus flips entirely.
It does. The text argues that South Korea's long, miraculous era of operating as a pure enterprise, focusing on unbridled export-driven economic growth, has essentially stalled out.
Because the mechanics of that growth engine are broken in an automated world.
Precisely. Therefore, society must transition away from the extractive enterprise mindset and embrace generative business.
And this transition introduces what I think is the most complex concept in the text: the Jongbap, or the right law era.
Yes, the right law era.
The roadmap describes this as a societal system that operates with 0.1 millimeter precision. It claims that in this era, acting rightly, meaning acting collaboratively to benefit others, naturally and inevitably leads to a good life.
And acting wrongly or selfishly leads directly to economic and social hardship.
It completely merges morality with cold economic reality.
It does. The ultimate advice given to the individual here is a radical departure from everything we are taught about financial survival. It simply says, stop working just to make money.
Stop working to make money. Just like that.
Just like that. The text insists that if you adopt the mindset of a researcher, striving purely to benefit society and uplift those around you through your specific role, your basic needs and your wealth will naturally be taken care of by the system.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I want to challenge the mechanics of this a little bit because it sounds incredibly noble to just work for the benefit of humanity and blindly trust that the universe will pay your grocery bills.
It does sound a bit like magic, doesn't it?
It really does. How does this roadmap expect everyday people to actually make that massive leap of faith? Does this system just magically drop money into your bank account for being a good person?
This raises an important question. It sounds mystical until you view it strictly through the lens of a hyper-connected post-automation economy.
Okay, walk me through that.
The leap of faith isn't based on wishful thinking. It is grounded in the hard mechanics of a rapidly changing technological landscape. Think about what actually retains value when AI and robotics completely commodify physical goods and basic administrative services.
Well, if the machines are doing all the heavy lifting, the physical output has zero margin, like it's virtually free to produce.
Exactly the point. In a world where machines make all the physical goods effortlessly, the only scarce resources left in the market are trust, authenticity, and genuine human elevation.
Wow, that shifts everything.
It does. Human value will only be rewarded by society when it provides complex social, cultural, or spiritual benefit. In a highly networked, transparent society, reputation and social impact effectively become hard currency.
So if I'm operating my cafe purely as an old-school enterprise cutting corners, treating my staff poorly, just trying to extract maximum wealth from my community without giving anything back, the network recognizes that friction immediately.
You get routed around, people, capital, and attention naturally flow away from extractive nodes and flow toward generative nodes.
Toward the businesses that are actually operating under that Hongik philosophy of broad human benefit.
Exactly. That is the 0.1 millimeter precision of the right law era. It's not universe magic. It's instantaneous market feedback in a fully transparent social economy.
That makes a lot of sense.
If you act selfishly, you destroy your own network value. If you act as a researcher elevating your community, you become a high-value node, and the network sustains you.
The Hongik mindset isn't just nice moral advice for a utopian future, then. It is literally the blueprint for the new economic reality.
It really is. If robots are doing the labor, you cannot compete as a laborer. You will be priced out of existence.
You can only compete and earn a living by offering the one thing algorithms and steel arms cannot: deep intellectual cultural care for your fellow humans.
The transition from the factory floor to the research mindset is not an optional upgrade. It is an absolute survival imperative for the 21st century. It begins with regional integration in places like Gyeongnam, but it inevitably scales out across the entire global economy.
We've covered an incredible amount of ground today. We started with the immediate pragmatic mechanics of why local provinces like Gyeongnam, Busan, and Ulsan must abandon their zero-sum rivalries and dissolve their borders by 2026.
Right, they have to merge into a unified megacity just to achieve the basic energy size needed to attract global momentum.
And then we explored the jarring transition away from the physical factory labor that built the modern world. We unpacked how the universal education powered by Hangul makes the old laborer identity feel like intellectual slavery.
We also analyzed the upcoming 2030 milestone, anticipating a massive global influx of youth and women who have downloaded the UI of Korean pop culture and will soon arrive demanding the back-end code of profound intellectual leadership.
And we broke down the mechanics of that back-end code, shedding the title of laborer to become cultural researchers, and adopting the ancient Hongik philosophy of broadly benefiting humanity, not as a moral crusade, but as the only viable economic model in a post-automation, reputation-driven network.
It is a sweeping, structurally radical vision of the future.
It truly is.
And it is crucial to remember that whether you are currently listening to this deep dive in South Korea or you are navigating a career on the exact opposite side of the world, the underlying mechanics apply to you.
Absolutely.
The fundamental shift from laborer to researcher, from producing raw physical output to generating optimized cultural and social value, is eventually coming to your industry too. The machines are absorbing the heavy lifting. What remains is our intellectual responsibility to each other.
Which leaves us with a truly fascinating, paradigm-shifting question to ponder. We talked at the very beginning about that lingering image of the traditional assembly line, clocking in, clocking out, trading physical exhaustion for basic survival.
Right.
In that 20th century system, the ultimate goal was always retirement. You hoarded enough wealth so that one day you could finally escape the pain of laboring.
That was the dream.
But if robots completely take over our manual labor and our new permanent role in society is to act as intellectual, cultural researchers focused entirely on elevating our communities, what happens to the concept of retirement?
Oh, that's a great question.
If work is no longer a painful physical trade for basic survival, but instead becomes a lifelong, fulfilling intellectual pursuit to help others, does the human need to ever actually stop working simply disappear?
Wow.
It's something to deeply consider the next time you look at your career path. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, and we'll catch you next time.